One of the first things to do after opening the Creality 4 software is to create a new project. Then you name the project, in which case I am getting ready to scan a Precious Moments figurine. So I named it Precious Moments. When performing this scan, I used blue laser mode instead of infrared mode. Infrared mode is mainly for larger objects, so this is a smaller object. I'm also using point cloud scan mode instead of global marker or local detail. And I'm using a real-time resolution of 0.1 millimeter. The laser mode I've selected is for this small of a figurine parallel lines. If I was doing a scan of a larger object, I would use cross lines. So I'm starting with parallel lines. Notice that there is a colorful bar on the left side of the monitor screen. That bar indicates the distance from the scanner to the figure. You want to keep it at an optimal distance, which is the green zone. As you scan, you need to wait for the figure to turn completely blue to know that you've captured the entire surface. At this point, I've sped up the scanning results by 4 times the speed. I've also switched here to the single line laser mode in order to get into the deeper spaces like the cracks and the crevices. I've slowed down the speed here to real time. And now I'm looking over the scan to make sure that I've gotten most of it. It's very difficult to get underneath the model because the scanner ends up losing track of the object. You need to click on the clipping plane button located at the top of the application in order to delete the base on which the model sits. Then you use the Alt key and the left mouse button in order to select 3 markers on the base. Once you're satisfied with the area to be deleted, you click on the check mark to delete it. Here I clicked on Finish to complete this particular scan. You can also edit out any extraneous scanned information by selecting the Shift button and using the left mouse to circle around noise. Highlights it in red, and then you can click the Delete button. And when you're fairly satisfied, you click the checkmark button to save the edits. That's what I did right there. Now I've chosen to fuse the model. When fusing, I decided to use the standard instead of fast, and I use the resolution 0.1 millimeters, 50% noise removal, and to remove the markers. Here the model, or the scan, is being fused, and it takes some time. I left the speed here at real time so that you can see how long it takes to fuse a scan. You can choose to fuse after each scan, or you can wait and do several scans and then fuse them all at once through batch fusion. Now the fusion is done, you can choose to edit some of the extraneous noise. So I'm using a lasso tool and using the shift and the left mouse button to circle around the noise that I want to remove. I delete it and check around the scan to see if there's any more that I want to choose to delete. I see that there's none, so I save it, and then I choose a new scan to scan a different part of the model. I've put the figurine on its head using some putty. I'm using blue line laser mode, point cloud settings, 0.1 millimeter resolution, parallel line mode, and now I'm ready to preview this. If you look in the upper right corner of the Creality Scan 4 software, you'll see a black box. In this black box, you'll see the exposure and brightness settings for the laser scanner. So if the markers that are on the base of what you're scanning reflect back red, then you are overexposed. The same goes with the laser lines that you see within this black box. You can adjust the exposure and the brightness settings within this black box so that you can get the laser lines to look gray and the markers to look white. So after the adjustment, I'm able to scan until the figurine area is blue. Here I've sped up the speed of the video by 4 times. It takes a lot of patience to do a scan. At this point, I've switched to the single line laser mode in order to get into the cracks and the crevices. Now I've slowed down to real time, and I'm selecting 3 of the markers in order to create a plane that I can delete. Do that using the Alt key and the left mouse button. Once I'm satisfied, most of that has been selected, I then go to check the check mark and it removes it for me. I'm going to look at the model and make sure that most of the model has been scanned. And it looks like that it has, so I'm going to finish the scan. At this time I can delete any other noise, and so that's what I'm going to do. So using the shift and the lasso tool, using the shift and the left mouse button, I can circle around the noise and delete it. And when I'm satisfied that I've deleted most of the noise, I'll then click on the check mark. Right there, I've saved my edit savings. Now I'm clicking on a new scan, so I can scan a different part of the figurine. Using blue line laser, 0.1 millimeter scan settings, parallel line mode, and I've switched the model around to the back side. When I say model, I actually mean the figurine. I click on preview in the software, make sure that my exposure and brightness settings are okay. It's very difficult to see in the video, but the box is also very tiny and still difficult to see even when you're looking at it, not through a video. So fairly satisfied with the exposure and the brightness, so I start the scan by hitting the button on the scanner tool once. Here I've sped up the video speed by 4 times. Double-clicking on the button on the scanner allows me to cycle through different modes, whether it's cross-line, parallel line, or single-line mode. So I've double-clicked here to transition to single-line mode. Clicking on it again allows me to pause and look at the model. So here I'm selecting 3 global markers to create a plane, to remove that part of the scan. There is a green arrow that shows up on there after clicking those that you can hover over and then left click on it and move it up and down to increase the height of the plane that you want to delete. So here I'm increasing it and the plane is red. covering the model, so I decrease the level of the arrow to just cover the section that I want to delete. I click on the checkmark button to delete it. And all that's left is my scan. There's a little bit of noise here and there, but first I want to check and make sure that I've scanned or gotten most of the areas that I can possibly get with the scanner. I'm satisfied with that, so I click on Finish. Look around to see if there's any other noise that I need to delete or remove. I fuse here, so I've left it on standard, 50% noise level reduction. The resolution is 0.1 millimeter, and I want to remove the markers. Here I start a new scan. Using blue line laser mode, point cloud, 0.1 millimeter resolution, and parallel lines. I click on preview. I've switched the model around. I'm checking the resolution and brightness and starting the scan. I've increased the speed to 4 times. Double-clicking on the button on the scanner, I've switched to the single line laser mode, again to get into those deeper crevices. Now I've paused the scanning by clicking on the button once, and I want to create the plane to get rid of that plane underneath my figurine. I selected 3 points. And then I click on the check mark button in the left bar to say that I want to get rid of the plane. So all that's left is the scan of my model and some noise. I've clicked finish in the upper part of the bar on the application. Now I'm able to remove other noise around the scan using a lasso tool and the shift and left mouse button. I click on the delete key, delete the noise. Then I want to kind of check around on my scan to see if I want to delete anything else. I click on save my edits, and now I'm ready to fuse again. Standard fusion, not fast. Resolution of 0.1 millimeter, 50% noise reduction in removing the markers. I've increased the speed here to 4 times. Now at this point, I'm looking around at different scans. To see which ones I want to align together. One of the scans didn't turn out very well, so I won't be using that. Click on the meshing button at the top of the screen. And then I can select which of the scans I want to align. I tried an auto align first to see how that would look. Looks okay, but there's a couple of the models I forgot to delete the clay that held the model in place, so I can go back and correct that. So I exit that, and then I can look at which scans need to have the clay removed. Unfortunately, I can't delete the clay because the edit toolbar is missing. Here I clicked on the meshing button located at the top of the screen and selected the highest number of triangles in order to improve the surface of the model. I also selected the highest level of mesh smoothing, highest boundary smoothing, the highest percentage to remove isolated parts, and the highest setting to remove spikes. I also turned on the setting to fill holes that were at least 5 millimeters in size. So here is the mesh. I can see that there are certain pieces of clay still available on the mesh and need to be removed. So at this point, I'm looking at which of the scans have the clay that need to be removed. Notice how the edit toolbar is missing under each scan layer. I actually have to click back and forth between the mesh layer and the scan layers in order for that bar to show up, and then I'm able to edit the scans. At this point, I'm going to use the lasso tool and the shift and the left mouse button in order to remove the clay from certain scans. I've deleted the clay, look around for any other deletions that I might want to do. There's some more to delete, so I use the lasso tool to circle around those, to remove those, and delete those too. Now that I'm satisfied, I save those edits. On that scan, and I look at the other scan, and there's some clay that I need to remove from this scan as well. Notice that the edit tools are not available unless I click the meshed version of the scan and then go back to the original scan, and then I get the tools. Tools are available, so I use the lasso tool and the shift and left mouse button to circle areas I want to delete. I delete those, and then I save the edits. I click on the meshing button again and use the same settings as before, and then click apply. When you use the highest number of triangles in the mesh settings, it can slow down the processing of the mesh, so you need to make sure that your computer can handle that setting. I've sped up the video to 4 times the speed. After looking at the mesh, I've noticed that there are still some imperfections, so I'm going back to the scan where I see the imperfection and using the lasso tool to select and delete the imperfections. Do a last scan of the model. And save my edits. When I look back at the mesh, I want to make sure that there's no other imperfections. So I'm going back and looking at some of the scans again. Here I run the mesh yet again. I can still see that there are some holes in the mesh, so I'm going to edit the mesh this time, not the scans. So I click on the edit button at the top of the application, and here I'm able to fill in holes. I'm doing the manual setting, and it highlights where it sees holes. and by hovering over it, it turns red, and if you click on it when it's red, it actually flags that area to be filled in when you click OK at the end. Now I've exited out of the edit of the mesh, and I'm looking around at the model. See if there's any other areas I want to fix. There are, so I'm going to use the lasso tool to delete imperfections. Once I'm satisfied, I'll save my edits. I'm checking around the model because sometimes when you select something to delete it, it will delete other things in a straight line right across where I've lassoed the piece that I did not want to have in my model. So you have to check on the other side to make sure that the scan isn't being deleted on another side. Now I can edit this and fill in the whole of the mesh where I just deleted. So it's been selected for being filled in. I click OK, it's been filled in, and it looks pretty good. I'm impressed. At this point, I back out of that area. I'm editing the mesh. I'm pretty happy with my scan at this point. And now I can export it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm exporting it as an .stl file.